I'm going to do a very short introduction, and I'm going to ask Fahad from the bank to give you a longer one. But I just really wanted, on behalf of everyone, to welcome Mr. Chan, Ronnie Chan, our next speaker. And what I wanted to say is it's not all about the level of gifts that you might give around the world that shows philanthropic leadership. It's also about your interest in philanthropy, your support for research in philanthropy, your leadership within the region. And if I think of those three things in the context of the world, I quite simply think of three people that actually are great shining examples, and two of them actually are going to be with us today. The third I would say, be Bill Gates in terms of what he's done in the US. I think Dame Stephanie Shirley is a superb example in Europe and in the UK. And then we have Ronnie Chan, and he really is the best person to talk about his journey with philanthropy and his family journey with philanthropy, because in Asia, he really is a beacon and a leader in all things to do with philanthropy. So thank you very much, Ronnie, for coming and spending the time with us. I know you have a very busy schedule. You're off to Canada this afternoon. You came in yesterday to be with us. We really appreciate the time, and thank you so much. And as one true leader of philanthropy in the whole Asia-Pacific region, we welcome you and thank you. I'm going to ask Fahad just to say a few more words about all your achievements and some background before you start your talk. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you've all enjoyed your lunch. And I'd like to, first of all, thank Ben so much for being a partner with us at Kleinwood Hambros and putting on not only this event, but deepening what we think is a really fabulous partnership between the two of us. Earlier, John mentioned the social legacies and the financial legacies and them being separate things, but with the partnership that we have, hopefully we can address those in a very comprehensive and holistic way. So thank you very much for all the wonderful work that you do and the depth that you offer us as a firm. Number two is, of course, the main event with Ronnie. And I keep this brief because it's impossible, even if I was to speak here for 20 minutes, to really give an accurate sense of the depth of your experience or the staggering achievements that you have done. But very quickly, and I'm just going to really list off some things for more for food for thought for the audience, is Mr. Chan is the chairman of the Hang Lung Group, which was founded in 1960 by his father. And by the time that Mr. Chan himself really came into the business in the early 90s, this was a very established business already, one of the biggest in Hong Kong. But his prescience was such that he realized a great revolution was coming in China. And he aggressively expanded the firm into Chinese real estate. And that was in 1992. I think it's fair to say, looking back, that was quite a good decision. The Chinese have obviously embarked on an unbelievable economic miracle since then. Hundreds of millions of people have come out of poverty, and a lot of buildings have been built. And that has obviously been a fabulous place to be and really driven the ability for Mr. Chan and his family to do what I think he would agree is actually the much more important part of his life and his legacy, which is all of his charitable giving and all of the work that he has done in the range of philanthropic activities. Now I'm going to start listing them now, and they're quite long. So Mr. Chan gets a lot of recognition for his $350 million, his family's $350 million gift to Harvard. That is just one part of a very large picture. There's also gifts to the University of Southern California. There are, Mr. Chan is also on the board of the China Heritage Foundation, the Forbidden City Cultural Heritage Trust, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He's the chairman emeritus of the Asia Society, chairman of the Hong Kong Center, and the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society. He has served on the governing or advisory bodies of the Peterson Institute of International Economics, the World Economic Forum, East-West Center, Yale University, Tsinghua University, Fudan University. And in addition, there are 500 scholarships every year that his family maintains for Chinese students at the top universities in that country. What I think is very important to take away from this huge list of achievements and incredible giving is the fact that there is no geographic boundary at all. There's work in China, there's work in the US, and there's wonderful work done everywhere in between. And in a world where tensions are increasingly rising, we live in a very populist time, and great inequality and challenges are beset us everywhere, really. Mr. Chan is really a shining example of what the world should look like. We're inclusive, where philanthropy is blind to color or geography, to and art and culture and giving is really wide open and done without regard to background or religion or gender or anything, and it brings everybody together. With that, it's my great honor to introduce Ronnie Chan.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak here, and in particular, originally my session was meant to be in the morning. It has to be changed to the afternoon because, thanks to Ben, I unfortunately had to attend a funeral in Cambridge, and I just got in. Ben is a smart man. You know why? He lived in Hong Kong for a few years, so. Apart from that, I'm not sure. No. Fahad, you probably don't know my relationship to SocGen, the bank. Almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I bought a small company in France, in the western part of France. And my manager in the front line said, Ronnie, we need some financing. So who do you know in Europe? I said, well, I know SocGen. He said, who do you know at SocGen? I said, oh, well, I know the chairman. Well, in a small deal like this, you don't go to the chairman, but I don't know who else to go to. So I called the chairman, I went to see him, and he sent me downstairs, and eventually they didn't do the deal. And I can't blame them, it's just too small a deal. But eventually we bought 50, 60 companies all over Europe, became a pretty sizable group, and it's at that time the second largest in Europe. And so SocGen came back to me and said, can we do business now? I was very happy. Remember small guys like me, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, I'm asked to talk about wealth transition. It is really not a subject that I like to talk about. Actually, philanthropy to me is really not a subject I speak a lot about. But because I know something about Asia, I know something about North America, I know very little about Europe, and I want to know what it is like in Europe, and that's why when Ben called, and the fact that he was in Hong Kong and some of my colleagues are speaking to him, I thought, okay, fine, maybe I will come. I'm delighted to meet all of you. Unfortunately, I have to catch a flight right afterwards. I wish I can say hello to many of you. Perhaps I will still have the chance. Allow me to very quickly address three issues. The first one is transition. In particular, transition of the wealth in the form of the business that the founding father or mother of the company has started. The second one is the transition of the money itself, the wealth, if you will. And then finally, allow me to propose a solution to how best to transit from the first to the second, or from the second to the third, or whatever it is, generations in terms of the wealth part of it. First of all, on the transition of the business part of it, I know that this is probably not some of the things that are the most important to you, but nonetheless, I think it is important, because in my family, we have a practice, and that is, if you don't know how to make money, you do not get to give the money away. We believe that everyone in the family who take part in deciding where the philanthropic dollar should go should know how to make money. Doesn't have to be the family business, it can be anything. So since the family business usually it's a sizable part for most people, I like to just say a word about it. I'm always troubled by the fact that why does the father have to give the business to the son and the son to the grandson? Fundamentally, you're putting yourself at a very, very disadvantaged position. The world is big. There are many smart people out there. With money, you can hire the best. Well, not just money, you need ethics and so forth, but nonetheless, money is important. And with money, you can hire the best. And the pool is the world, or the city at least, or the country, depends on the case. By forcing yourself to give your business to your son, you're reducing the pool of candidates to the number of children you have. Now that to me is not a smart thing to do. Now that said, my father founded a company, he had 3 sons, and I'm now running the public company. And my brother and I together run the other family business, which frankly is to us much more significant than the publicly listed company. So I know that I'm slapped on my own face. And to make it worse, my son is now working for me. And he's a very fine young man, very competent and capable, and I suppose one day he may become the chairman of the company. But that said, if you start with a mindset that it has to be so, then perhaps you should think again. If you're lucky, like my family, I did okay. My father left me a good business, and my brother and I have grown it many, many folds, and I trust that my son will do the same. If you happen to have a offspring, a son or daughter, that may be able to run the business, of course, why not? But on the other hand, if you begin by insisting on that, then perhaps you are limiting your own options. That maybe you are sowing the seed of the downfall of your company. So I advise many of my friends who are wealthy that they really should consider not giving the business to their children for management. I grew up a privileged individual, admittedly. And over the last 30-some years, I have been in, so to speak, this circle. I remember 20-some years ago, I was invited to address a group at the Hay Adams Hotel outside of the White House in Washington, D.C. I have no idea who they are. I walk into the room, they introduce everybody. I thought to myself, my head began to click, and I figure in that room, there must be tens of billions of US dollars. The names, if I were to mention them, many of them will be household names that you all will know. And, I grew up interacting with such people, both in Hong Kong, Asia, and in America. And I must say that not many parents do a good job in preparing their next generation. What kind of intellect they have, what kind of EQ they have, what kind of IQ they have, what kind of education they have, some of them can be helped. But there's one area that, from my observation, very few people talk about, and very few parents conscientiously develop the quality in the children. For example, ethics. If you don't have it, you don't have it. And if you don't have it, the likelihood is that your children will also not have it. But even if you have it, your children still may not have it. And it is something that, as parents, we need to work on. We need to be examples, and we need to give them the proper environment such that the next generation, hopefully, will have moral fibers that you yourself have if you have it. Another example. The most important thing to any one of us, no matter what your economic status is, but in particular to the wealthy second generation, is how you look at yourself, your self-view. That is so important. Many young people grow up thinking that they are somebody just because of their last name. It is said that power corrupt and absolute power corrupt. Absolutely. Allow me to add a second part of it. Money corrupts seriously, and a lot of money seriously corrupts. And that's something that I have, in my last 30 years, 40 years, moving about in this circle, so to speak, of very, very wealthy individuals. I find that the view of themselves of the wealthy kids are oftentimes not that adequate. And frankly, it is the parents that is partly to blame. And what kind of people your second generation is, beyond just capability. If you don't have the capability, just find a professional manager. But even if they're capable, what kind of person they are. To prepare our next generation is something that is work. One should, every wealthy individual, father and mother, should take that seriously as, shall I say, work. Just like you have to work at your business, you also have to work at your children, hopefully from a very young age, such that they will grow up with moral fiber, such as having the proper self-view, and such as having the proper relationship is with his or her fellow men and fellow women. It is not just the education you give to your children. It's not just the self-view that hopefully you help your children shape in themselves. It's not just help them interact with other people. It's not just the ethics that you instill in your children. But allow me to be a little specific. And that is, wealthy parents better give their children the proper sense of value of money. Of money. Wealthy people or wealthy children growing up, money to them is nothing. There's just plenty of it. And so they can hardly appreciate money. And one of the saddest things in life, as far as I can tell, is to not know the value of money. Not that we should overly love it, but whatever it is, however much you have or however little that you have, however little that you have, you know the value of money. But when you have a lot, to be able to instill in your children the proper sense of value of money is probably one of the very, very important things that you can do for your children and for yourself. I'm very happy that I'm a privilege, not just having grown up in a family that have some material goods, but by God's grace, I grew up in a family that instilled in my brother and me a proper sense of the value of money. And in fact, if they don't know the value of money, I don't think they will ever be a good philanthropist. To them, it's just another number, another zero. There's no heart to it, and there's no personal, subjective appreciation of what they are doing. It's not the amount. You know, Farhan mentioned some amount. I'd never like to mention amount. Depending on your circumstance, your wealth level, you do whatever you can, and that's great, wonderful. One who gave 350 million to another one who gave 300,000, or to one that gave 350, to me it's the value is the same. If that's your capacity and if your heart is there. What is a solution? To me, there is a solution. To me, there is a good solution. I know that sons and daughters will hate me when I say this. So be it. And that is, don't give your children anything. Or give them a little bit. But for the bulk of it, give it all away. You know, a couple of years ago, I was at the office of Bill Gates, and he said, Ronnie, how come you haven't signed the whatever you call it, the pledge to give out in your lifetime majority of the wealth, if not all, huh? And I said, Bill, I'm not that wealthy. When my father died, before he died, he and I together set up a trust. Father and son agreed, and I consulted with my brothers. We all agreed. By the way, my father came to me and said, Ronnie, I want to give you and your brother something. Not too much, but something. So I said, well, Dad, thank you. I don't think I need it. You have given us a good academic education, and more importantly, a family education. You're great examples to us. Good enough. If I still don't know how to fend for myself and make a living for myself, your giving it to me may not help me anyway. But I trust that you have prepared your 3 sons well enough that they can live as productive individuals in society. So why do I need it? I cannot speak for my brothers, so let me go talk to them. I'm happy to report. I talked to my 2 brothers. They all agree with me that we don't need anything. So father and son, my father and myself, set up a trust where the 3 sons are excluded class. I don't get anything. It's all to be given to charity. My mother is 98 years old. I'm flying to see her right after this. A happy day for me. And, of course, she can use whatever is in the trust, but the 3 sons are excluded class. As a result, the 3 sons never fight. There's nothing to fight about. Why do you insist on putting some elements in your family that your sons can fight about? Some of you are from Hong Kong. I see a few Hong Kong friends here. You know that several families in Hong Kong right now as we speak are having a hell of a hard time, brothers fighting, siblings fighting, right? You're laughing. I know all those people. We grew up together. Whose fault is it? Sorry to say, it's the parents' fault. Why do they give them anything? But of course, if you decide to give them nothing, later in life, you have a problem. You may lose your son or daughter. So you have to start early. As your children are growing up, give them the proper moral education, give them the sense of value of money, and then finally, make sure they have zero expectation of getting a penny from you. If you later decide to leave them 50 million, 100 million, whatever it is, they're not going to say no. They're not going to complain about it. Right? So why bother to give your children expectation of any sort? Raise them up in a proper way such that they know the family wealth will all go to charity. Then they have no expectation. You won't lose your son or daughter. Because if you don't do that when they're young and tell them when they are 17, 18, 19, 25, whatever, you may lose your son and daughter. And if you don't lose them, they get the money, they may lose the money. So either way, it's a bad deal. So the best deal is to not give the money to your children. That is the only solution I know of, after studying 3,000 years, shall I say, of wealth creation and wealth transition. I don't know if Ben and Fahad did mention, I chair an organization called the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, which is probably the only serious research-based organization on Asian philanthropy. And every economy, East and West, and North and South, have problem of that sort. So I think that the best deal, ladies and gentlemen, I got great news for you. If you're a wealthy guy, make up your mind, as many of us did, to never give your children any money. Now, I'm not a wealthy man. I live comfortably. I need no sympathy, okay? But, I told Bill Gates, I said, hey, number one, we have long given away all the money. And number two, if I were to sign this thing, people will say, Ronnie, you still have a lot of money? Otherwise, why are you signing this thing? I will be totally lying, as if I belong to a certain league that can give, all their money away and the newspaper will report about it. I am not. So Bill reluctantly accepted my explanation and never bothered me again. And I'll be hosting dinner for his staff in a few days' time when I'm back in Hong Kong, and I'm pretty sure they will not raise the subject again. Bill is doing a great job, as you said, Ben. And by the way, many philanthropists started out life very stingy in terms of philanthropy. I don't want to name names, many of you know who I'm talking about. But then somehow, in their head, it clicked. And they decided that the best thing for them, for the money, for society, for posterity, is to give all their money away. So I was yesterday at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. The building in which I was built by John D. Rockefeller, I suspect Jr. And I'm happy to say that I chair an organization which, as Fahad mentioned, Asia Society, was founded by John D. Rockefeller III. And so giving all that money away is a wonderful thing for you, for your children, and for society. It's good for your health, it's good for your children's health, and it's good for society health. I know there's a book that just came out by an Indian gentleman, a journalist, that really give philanthropists a hard time. I just read a summary, I haven't read the book, so I dare not definitively say he may have a point. But my view so far is that philanthropy is still a wonderful thing. You want taxation, or you want philanthropy? You make up your mind what you support. To me, a good society is relatively low taxation. You have to have taxation, right? Relatively low taxation, so that there's plenty of incentive for people to make wealth, and then the majority of them would give all their wealth away. They will live happily, their children will be happy, and society will be better off. So I hope that my solution is not too radical, too drastic, too offensive to some of you. But I think that after concluding a study of 3,000 years of human history, I think my solution, ladies and gentlemen, is the only solution. I wish you well. Thank you.